thank you everyone for joining. This is our first of the session. We have been doing it over 2.5 years or so. And some of you have already been there in previous ones with different topics. And really appreciate you joining, and you created a very good community around this whole interactive CISO roundtable concept. And so with that, what the interactive CISO roundtable is mainly, bringing in experienced CISOs and experts in the area into whatever the trend is right now in the technology sector. And we basically have a very roundtable kind of discussion where not only we have these very, our esteemed panelists, but as well as we also see that, some of the participants can interact with them with their insights and questions, whatever you want to ask. So with that, we'll start off this year. This our first session of 2025, and today the theme is around, the one is it's CISO roundtable. So we discussed a little bit around the CISO's landscape of how the CISO's role is evolving in the industry, and then second is around a current topic, which is of AI security whether in the infrastructure, whether in applications, and then third is what are the top I guess challenges in 2025 for the CISOs and the cybersecurity leaders. So those are the themes today. And then with that, let me introduce our panelists. So we have Jim here, Jim Routh. He's an experienced veteran of the industry, currently Chief Trust Officer at Saviynt. So Jim, would you like to a little bit elaborate on your background for some of the new folks here?
Sure. So I've been a 6-time CISO, primarily financial service organizations, companies like American Express, DTCC. Work for JP Morgan Chase, Aetna, CVS, Mass Mutual, KPMG. So I was also on the board of the FS ISAC and the Health ISAC, which I helped found. I'm now retired, if you want to call it that. Retirement, of course, is just doing fulfilling work. So I work with only people I like, present company included. I only do the kind of work that I like to do, and I only work when I want to work. So that's kind of the equilibrium that I've reached recently. But I still I teach cybersecurity at NYU Tandon School of Engineering, so stay as active as I can. And these topics are really interesting to me, so I'll certainly feel free to share my perspective, and hopefully that'll be a catalyst for some discussion.
Thank you, Jim. And then we have Randy here, Randy Barr. Randy also, many of you might know him. Again, he's a veteran CISO, in a number of companies and currently at Sequence. So Randy, would you like to elaborate a bit on your background?
Sure. My security career started early 2000. As you mentioned, I was at WebEx, and shortly after that, I pursued. I got the startup bug and went to startup companies that eventually had some pretty decent growth from there. Companies like Qualys. I also worked for Zoom and a few other startups in between. So I'm at Sequence today as their Chief Information Security Officer, building their security program, and love security, love being a part of it, love engaging with others in the security community that share the same passion, and love hearing what they're doing. And I also love sharing some of my experience with them, and hopefully we can get to a point where we agree on certain things and hopefully work together on building a better security community.
Thank you, Randy. And then our third panelist we have is Ali. Ali is co-founder and CPO, Chief Product Officer at Graphian, which is a next-gen infrastructure company and doing a lot of cutting-edge stuff. So Ali, if you would like to elaborate a little bit on your background for these.
Sure. Thanks, Naveen. So been in on the telecommunications network infrastructure side of things for a while now. Started writing code, implementing network infrastructure, then moved up the chain to writing less code and being more management, I suppose, as time goes by. Ex-Cisco, so I suppose Randy, Jim, everyone's paths here in some shape or form cross there. And now, working on, again, wide area infrastructure and cryptography for Graphian.
Thank you, Ali. So So before we get started, I looked at some of the stats today, and which is interesting for me on this topic of the CISO's role as well as the key issues today facing challenges for the CISOs. One of the things I learned was this: by 2025, I should have done research before. Cybercrime is projected to cost the world around 10.5 trillion annually. So I double checked again. I said, is that a correct number? 10.5 trillion. I didn't even read. It's up from like 8.4 in 2022, it seems, and 3 trillion or so in 2015. So that's like, I guess a humongous number. And then the next one of the other interesting stat I learned was like about only 12% of the CISOs, today they feel very confident about their organization's ability to handle this whole AI-driven threats. So that's obviously is going to be one of our topic of discussion. And at the same time, then 60% of security leaders, they feel that AI is a double-edged sword. Like on one side, it's can help improve the defense, but also it enhances cyber criminal tactics, right? So those are some of the key interesting facts, I guess, the stats I learned. So basically and now with regard to changing role of CISOs, seems like CISOs are not just technical leaders, as you know, how they have evolved over 5 years. And of course, we'll hear from our panelists here and other folks who are CISOs. They're not only just technical leaders, but risk managers, board advisors, and business enablers. So with that in mind, why don't we start with Jim? Jim, how do you think the role of CISO has evolved over the last 5 years, and what do you think are the biggest shift you see in that role in this year and going forward over, let's call it, next 3 to 4 years?
I think the biggest change is that the CISO is now a leader with a legitimate seat at the table in the C-suite, and that wasn't the case, certainly not when I started. And I'll tell you a story just to illustrate this. So I was the first CISO at American Express. The only reason that American Express chose me to be a CISO was because the Graham-Leach-Bliley Act required a financial service company to have a CISO. And 2 years after the act went into effect, American Express didn't have a CISO. So they were kind of forced into that situation. And so that's how I started my career in security. And of course, I didn't know what I was doing, but the one thing that I figured was the safest path was to meet expectations. So my stakeholders, which is the CEO and the CEO's direct reports, all figured that I was the subject matter expert for cybersecurity because this was 20 years ago. It's kind of new, right? And so I acted the part thinking that that would be the safest, politically, the safest strategy for me. And it turns out I was absolutely wrong. And I couldn't have made a more significant mistake. Now, here's why. To be a leader with a seat at the table, you have to have facilitation skills. You have to be able to facilitate consensus on thorny issues, and on any business issues, technology issues, cybersecurity issues. But you have to be a facilitator. Well, guess what? Just look up the definition in a search query, and you'll find that the most important ingredient is to be unbiased. Well, a subject matter expert, which is what all my stakeholders figured I was, is biased by definition. You have to be biased, right? You have to have a technical opinion. Say, no, don't do it that way. You got to do it this way, right? Well, that works. And in this case, I basically went to the C-suite, my first meeting with them. I said, these are our top cybersecurity priorities. They'd never seen the list before. They weren't even sure what cybersecurity was. So they kind of nodded and said, yeah, okay, all right, yeah, we'll go along with that. Then I said, okay, these are the investment requirements to manage these top risks for the enterprise. So they looked at it and said, okay, yeah, that sounds reasonable, right? And so I'm thinking, I got exactly what I asked for. I asked for these priorities, I asked for these resources, and I figured, geez, this CISO stuff isn't that hard. 6 months later, the market conditions changed. There's a lot of financial stress. And needless to say, all of my pet projects that, what I thought were so important got shelved. And all of the other pet projects got funded. Now, I went to them, I said, wait a minute, we agreed to do this, 6 months ago. What changed? And they said, well, we didn't really agree to that. We just listened to what you said. So I acted like the subject matter expert. I met expectations. I was wrong. I had to manage expectations, not meet expectations, manage expectations. And I wasn't doing that. I had to facilitate consensus. I didn't do that. I paid the price. So I learned that to be a leader, you can't be the subject matter expert because the subject matter expert always has an opinion. And you have to forge consensus. Now, it's harder to do, takes greater skill, but when you do that as a CISO, the decisions stick. They're adhered to. They don't crumble in pressure. And so being a facilitator is a essential skill. And as we'll talk about a little bit later, I will argue that being a facilitator is more important today with Gen AI governance, and to apply Gen AI governance that requires multidisciplinary governance, that requires facilitation. So I think, Naveen, that the CISO today and going into tomorrow has to be less of the technical subject matter expert and more of the facilitator projecting an air of unbias towards the key decisions.
Yeah, that's a very good point. Yeah. Randy, how about, would you like to, great to hear your insights from what you have seen, how the role has evolved and where it's going.
Yeah, so, I mentioned earlier that I was in the security space early 2000. Wasn't a CISO until mid 2000 or 2004, 2005, but was asked to lead the security team because of an incident. And the incident was because of vulnerability in our environment. We figured out there was a vulnerability, remediated, and then brought the system back up and running. It was a really public thing. And we weren't the only company that was faced by that. But back then, before all that happened, early 2000 for a security professional was pretty easy, and that is protect the perimeter. Focus on firewalls, focus on antivirus. There wasn't much of a checklist. It was more of, did you do this work, and have we identified all the devices that needed antivirus? And any network change, is there a strong change control process? That's how I remembered it. Then shifting more towards 2010, that's when cloud adoption, started taking off. We started talking about cloud in 2007. Before that, it was application service provider way before that. And then cloud started coming about 2007, 2008, 2010. And then security becomes, a game of cat and mouse. Attackers got smarter. They're using advanced persistent threats. At that time, I believe was a common term. And regulations like GDPR force companies to rethink all the privacy requirements. Then we start jumping over to later, where cyber attacks just got sophisticated. Breaches were focused more on the governments, Fortune 500 companies. Then you start to realize that you have this shadow IT type environment that started to grow, and APIs become that new battleground. And all at the same time, companies that you work for want to innovate faster. They want to be able to get there sooner, and they don't want security to slow them down. So that whole early on where the perimeter is, no, you cannot do this, no, you cannot do that, to crap, I need to start rethinking how I'm going to approach this and make sure that the business doesn't slow down because of me. How do I do that? And then now today, it's not just about security, it's business survival. Ransomware now operates at a high level. That's a lot more issues around that. Supply chains are in higher, are more of an attack vector. And so there's, that whole perimeter model has pretty much gone away, and there's a new different way that security professionals have to think. But I do agree that you have to be in an environment that transforms you from a very technical person, from being the no person, to being a business enabler, someone that can speak to other business units and be able to understand what they're looking for and try to come up with options instead of just the typical no when I first started out as a security person.
Thank you, Randy. So Ali, I mean, you obviously interact with a lot of CXOs, including CISOs, CIOs.
So
infrastructure
I'll
folks.
jump because I don't have that much longevity in terms of years. So I'll just jump straight to what I see now, right? I agree. The CISO is basically a business function owner. All right. You're not just a no person at all. So if I think about what the CISO now encompasses, one, tools. You have like 10 bajillion tools from the Wiz, the CrowdStrikes, the Zscalers, the Palo Altos, everything under the sun has to somehow roll up to the CISO. So you've got tools all over the map. You have risk. So now you've got to talk to the auditors and get the insurance policies renewed every year and the compliance certificates renewed every year. So you're involved in that. So you have a business function to protect the company there. You're involved in the application side. You have to help the business build new applications. So you really are a business function owner at this point. You're just not second order. Everything has to go through the CISO at some point. I mean, yes, there's a role for the CIO. Yes, there's a role for all the different units, but the CISO acts as that point. I mean, just the tools to integrate with everyone and make sense of how to respond to the threats. And I think this is where, as we go into the next topics, right, we'll have to evolve faster on the CISO side just because of the rate at which new things are going to get created with Gen AI, with the AI tools and everything else that's happening. I don't think we're going to reduce the number of tools we have. I think that's just going to increase, and how we manage that is going to become sort of key for CISOs as we look ahead.
Yeah, no, that's a very good point. Thank you, Ali. So anyone else from the audience who's been playing as a CISO role, or you'd like to provide insights or any questions for the panel? Neil, how are you? I know you've been working into a lot of security AI stuff, right? So we'll go to the next topic anyway. If you have any with regard to the CISO, if you want to say something.
I've never been a practicing CISO, but I've worked with a bunch of CISOs in my various jobs as product executive and co-founder in security startups.
Have you ever stayed at a Holiday Inn Express? Because if you have, you qualify.
Unfortunately, I have stayed at a few of those. Yeah.
Okay, so you qualify.
Okay. All right.
Hey, Naveen,
Okay.
this is Girish. I have a couple of questions.
Sure, please go ahead, Girish.
So very
Maybe
good
Girish, you
insights.
can a couple of lines for. I know you, of course, and many people. It'll be good to introduce 2 lines about yourself.
Yes, I'm Girish Mukai, co-founder CEO of startup Rockfish Data. We are a synthetic data platform company startup, and we help enterprises get over data silos, which are hampering operationalizing AI these days. So that's what we do. And our technology originated at Carnegie Mellon University. Both my co-founders are faculty members there. And we are now off to the races here. And of course, all of us know Naveen and the Kitra team, and they rock big time. So it's just been fortunate.
Oh, thank you. I didn't pay Girish, by the way. Thank you so much.
No worries. Naveen offered to buy gas for my Tesla.
That was the reason I offered to buy gas for Tesla. All right.
So I was at a dinner hosted by AWS last Thursday out in San Francisco. And the deputy CISOs, a number of them from Amazon were there. And one of the guys was speaking that one of the biggest threats these days is actually not all the tools and everything, but physical problem, right? Like, for example, in New York City, 4 a.m. or 3 a.m., when people are walking out of a bar, somebody snatches your phone, shows it to your face, and they can open your stuff, and all of a sudden they get access to your bank accounts and everything else, right? So, eventually, even though how much of our tooling we do, it's somebody is a weak link in this. Is that something that as a CISO, you kind of pay a lot of attention to? And how do you sort of prevent things of that nature? Right? Would love to understand that if you can.
I think one of the pieces, at least the way I see, because I end up being in on the infrastructure side, right? So you have to do a lot of threat modeling around what kinds of patterns of behavior are accepted. So for example, yes, I know everyone's going to have their phone and their phone is going to be with them, but that phone cannot access critical infrastructure when it's not at trusted zones, right? So you can start modeling out, okay, if they work from home, well, you can put like a radius around their home Wi-Fi essentially. Same with offices, same with data centers. There are ways to model the threat, and I think the tooling that now AI will provide will allow us to run much more interesting models to build this kind of pattern. But that's where the infrastructure will need to adapt. I mean, at the end of the day, yes, the weakest spot is human. The fundamental sources of weaknesses in our infrastructure tend to be human beings. Everyone keeps the same password on so many things. They lose their password keys. They aren't very good about their hygiene in terms of laptops or phones. So that tends to be the source, but this is where building threat models and patterns and building pattern recognition and intelligence into the infrastructure is how I think about the evolution. And the reason to do that is right now it's human. Soon it'll be bots. And then after that, it'll be agents that will be empowered to do a bunch of things. No matter how you feel about agentic stuff, that's coming at an accelerated rate. And so how you do pattern matching for what they're allowed to do is going to be more and more critical. So I think it's about intelligence into our infrastructure, about what is expected and good behavior and good hygiene.
And I would say that
Yeah.
the number of cell phones that are lost far out exceeds the number of cell phones that are stolen. So it's not necessarily, if I was a CISO, that would not be a threat that I'd be necessarily concerned about. However, I did learn recently that, have you all noticed that you're getting 5-10 times as many SMS phishing lures sent to you every day? Just more and more, fraud that's coming your way via text. Well, it turns out that what's happening is that there's been an influx of mobile devices that have been stolen. And if you look on Twitter or X, you'll find that people will drive by on a bicycle and then grab the phone out from somebody's hand that's holding it as they're, reading their text messages walking down the street. Well, the place that these phones are ending up is China. But what they're doing is they're making cell phone farms of tens of hundreds of cell phones all lined up, connected, that are texting these phishing texts. And so what they're doing is basically, if they can compromise the account, great. Then they try to milk that account for everything that they can. And when they're done with it, they stick the phone in this farm and it's doing outbound texting. And so the influx of text messages that are fraudulent that you're seeing today is coming from these, and we think of server farms, but these are cell phone farms where they have hundreds, if not thousands, of cell phones, and they're used. They're all like 3-4-year-old phones, but they're all being used to send SMS phishing lures. So I would probably, given what I now know, I'd start thinking about protective controls for enterprise users against these kinds of SMS phishing attacks. And I'd be scouring the market for some capabilities to do that, because I can see this just continuing to grow. So it's not so much the individual phone that gets stolen and compromised. It's more of the cell phones that are getting stolen and being shipped to these cellular farms.
In a fun way, Jim, what you just described, you know what it makes me think of? It's like, rather than the people, I'm like, AT&T, Verizon, get your act together. I mean, the number of emails I get from CISA on a daily basis about something happened inside AT&T or Verizon or Comcast or T-Mobile. It's like, come on, this is solvable. This is not that hard.
Yeah, and actually, speaking of that, I think hackers went into AT&T and took almost every single record, right? Which is commendable. How do you make sure that they get all of it? It takes
a lot of skill there.
The much scarier part of the Telco story, though, is taking over the Kalea boxes. Those that aren't familiar, Kalea is Communications Assistance for Law Enforcement Act, 20 years in wireless. Literally, they fork everything for a target to that box. It handles the decryption and then forward to the law enforcement agent. And I know Verizon was tagged, AT&T was tagged, and I think T-Mo was tagged as all of them being breached. So the Chinese, the People's Republic, actually could just set any phone in those networks as a target and pull down all the voice conversations, all the texts, all the data conversations, everything.
So Mike, do you think that they're getting those survey questions of the service quality now?
But this is the piece, right? Like Mike, what you just highlighted, right? It's we all in the security space, right? So much of the time, right? We target the end user with agents or clients or something of that sort. But so much of the time, we lose sight of our middle infrastructure. It's like this law enforcement network, it's a critical piece of both national security as well as law enforcement purposes. And we kind of just, oh yeah, somebody tapped it and tapped everything. And we didn't recognize it for I don't know how many years. It's that's where I think as we evolve, that we've got to relook at our whole national infrastructure.
I agree. And how that happened, well, I guess it doesn't surprise me. I mean, I saw some really stupid things while I was there, and it was that same kind of arc that Randy was talking about coming up where cybersecurity wasn't a thing and then it was. And that's how I ended up getting into security, was from a networking services guy, kind of drawn into that world over time. But I don't know. I don't know what to say. I mean, to me, that those were prize jewels, right? It used to be that they got a warrant, the guys in the switch would throw the tap up. And that was all taken away with all the new Kalea gear. Our compliance organization in New Jersey did all of that remotely. The guys in the switch couldn't even touch it. And how they let somebody from Beijing touch it, I don't know, but they did.
More often than not, right? There's some SNMP configuration running somewhere in the background, and no one even remembered to check that.
Oh yeah, what we found the Motorola backdoor into our network in 2004 that we put in there for Y2K. There was a T1 to a router in a closet in New Jersey that we'd put in there as a oh shit router for Y2K, and it was still running. And one of their SEs knew about it and used it to jump into our switches and just made a mistake. He wasn't doing anything malicious. He just made a mistake. But we had to play hunt the wampus, tracking MAC addresses through cam tables and track the router down to shut it off.
Thank you, Mike. Let's why don't before let's get into our meat of the theme today, which is more on the AI and cybersecurity. So which is like on one side is an opportunity, and at the same time it's a threat, right? So just with that topic, what do you think, Jim? Why don't we start off with you, or how do you see that as an opportunity or a threat?
The first thing from my perspective, I think it's an opportunity. It's definitely a different threat landscape than what we're accustomed to. I've heard some of my peers say, we have all the controls that we need for this. This isn't really a different threat. It's just some different technology. My own opinion, I think that's bullshit. I think anytime technology fundamentally changes, we have to rethink some control design to fit with the new technology and how it works. And this is no different. And we're going to have to come up with some new controls that don't exist today. And that's part of the journey. And we should welcome it. We should not say no, and we should not play ostrich and stick our head in the sand. We should welcome it, embrace it, and recognize that we don't have all the answers, but we do have a way of putting in place policy, kind of control standard by control standard, that allows us to evolve. And without saying no to the business for everything, we can actually look at specific use cases and design controls for the specific use case, put that into place, learn how the controls work, and then over time, build out a enterprise-wide policy based on the control standards that are put in place for each use case. So it starts by having a generative AI governance team and having somebody facilitate that team that may or may not be the CISO. I think the CISO has the most vested interests, but it doesn't necessarily have to be the CISO. It could be the chief digital officer, but it has to be a cross-functional team that looks at use cases for applying generative AI to meet business needs, and recognizing that if we can solve the control issues for a single use case, that set of controls, or some of them, some subset, may fit for the next use case or the use case after that. But over time, as we support use cases, we come up with a more comprehensive set of controls for the enterprise. The other thing I'll just mention is that 2 years ago, if we had talked about generative AI risk, we would have thought about data leakage through prompts of foundation models. And it's not, foundation models are widely used. 53% of Americans are using them today. And so, they've taken over by storm and are widely used. But the attack surface that's growing the fastest is SaaS apps with LLMs embedded in them. And then the third one is the software pipeline, your software distribution pipeline, because today, if I'm a developer, I have 1.5 million open source LLMs that I can import into and assemble my apps with and put it into production. So, and that's probably the biggest attack surface. So the way that the technology is being used today and accelerating in performance and in evolution, we've got 3 attack surfaces we have to manage. We don't have all the answers today, but if we tackle use cases, we have a fighting chance of putting controls in place over time that ultimately will end up being an enterprise-wide set of controls.
Thank you, Jim. So Ali, since you're obviously building a very innovative, cutting-edge solution in the infrastructure area, and I'm sure you get asked a lot of questions around the security and obviously provide some insight. So how do you think the role of AI, and what kind of questions do you get asked from your the customers?
So I'll jump straight into, as Jim described, let's talk about use cases, right? And the 2 use cases that I get asked about the most are data encryption and data traceability. Because the question here becomes, all right, there's always encryption at rest, encryption in transit, all these things, but now people is someone stealing the data? Is someone harvesting the data to train it themselves, do something else? So we get a lot of questions about what are we doing to evolve the encryption standards? How are things going to happen with new key management, and especially if we think about post-quantum cryptography? So we get one set of questions around the data security piece, encryption. We get big questions on that. So that's one important use case. The second use case becomes, all right, even if you encrypted it, data traceability. Every data asset, can I at all times know where it is, who authorized this transaction, where is it going? Did it happen to leave the United States and end up in China? Can I trace the history of that? Because as CISOs, we're increasingly dragged into the audit aspect of when something bad happens, now you're getting dragged in front of basically the board to explain what just happened, how did this happen, and well, CISO, you're kind of responsible for these things. So what are you going to do? So that's where I think the 2 use cases, data security around encryption, and particularly post-quantum encryption, and data traceability. Can we at all times know where the data is moving around? And I think that directly ties in with AI, right? LLMs are all over the map. You're doing inferencing in one place, your data store is in another place. Are you moving it the right way? Are you taking the right pathways? Do you have the right application calls being made? And I think even applications will have to evolve. The APIs that you use, how you use them, who is authorized to use them, all those elements. But I would bucket them into 2 categories. Data security, I get asked on encryption because of the infrastructure side, and data traceability.
Totally. No, very good points, Ali. Randy, what do you think, since you focus on API, and Ali also just mentioned about how the API side of the security needs to be tightened up?
Yeah, API is a growing concern. I mean, when I look at AI, early on in security, it was a race amongst other individuals, like a track and field race. Today, I feel like it's a race against a bullet train. And it's going in multiple different paths when it comes to AI. So it's a lot of catch-up work. There's a lot of frameworks that people are looking at, a lot of guidelines that people are trying to reference, and in some cases building on their own. And today I'm still talking to some security folks who said, yeah, we block it all. And I'm like, no, you're not blocking it all. Individuals have it on their phones, and a lot of the applications you already have some form of AI module already built in and is already being introduced to some of your users, and you may not realize that it's already in place. But I think you said something early on about AI, Naveen, that works two ways. One, it can work as a defensive tool, but it can also be used as a new attack surface. And so that means that security professionals, CISOs, kind of what Jim stated earlier, is that we need to change our strategy and we have to evolve pretty quick. And it's still a race, so we got to figure out what that looks like. A lot of the companies that I worked for prior to Sequence, they wanted to implement AI as quickly as possible, and that made it very challenging for me to say no or to catch up and see what they're doing, because they can go in multiple different directions without you even knowing what they're introducing. Wait a second, you're doing what to that data? Ali mentioned that that's very important to track, and so there's a lot of work that needs to be done in that world. So the other area that we also have to focus on is, the new regulations that is popping up, or the guidelines that are coming up. The EU AI Act is one that's pretty interesting. SEC regulations and other frameworks that are in other different countries that we have to also pay attention to. Some of it may be related more towards privacy. Others may be able to align with other common compliance requirements, whether it's ISO 27001, but then there's a certain set where you need to figure out if it's the security, the IT, the data governance team, or somebody else in other teams that really didn't have too much exposure to the compliance side, now gets pulled into that conversation. And then now you're working as that orchestration individual, the person that makes sure that everybody aligns with what we're trying to do as a company to ensure security with AI, whether you're developing yourself or you're adopting it as part of the use within your company. So it's definitely a disruptor in security. And it's not only just used for defense, kind of to what you said earlier, Naveen, but it's also used as a tool for those security professionals. So it's important for, I'm sorry, those bad actors. And so it's important for security professionals to really catch up on a lot of this.
In some ways, I'd say I think we've got to start going beyond that, right? We've got to be the ones building it out, right? As building the framework, because so some of the things that we're involved in right now, and some of us will have different experiences across this. We are building those AI data centers. The data sets are being churned up. New applications are turning up every day in the thousands. Sovereign infrastructure is being built, right? We know the EU is doing it. We know the Saudis are doing it. We know the Emiratis are doing it. We know the Chinese are doing it. Sovereign infrastructure is being built. New services will come online faster and faster. So for us, in some ways, right, the luxury to catch up is almost gone. This stuff is happening a lot faster, so we may as well be the ones who build the framework. It's like you can't put a data center, we'll help you design the data center. You can't build an application framework, we'll lay down the foundation for the application framework. So that's pretty much it. And yeah, it's funny you mentioned, Randy, you just posted about Apple. On the one side, Apple's building a bunch of infrastructure. On the flip side, I'm like, Apple's conceding to the UK government to weaken encryption standards. And it's like, oh God, all right. It's like every time you hear about a company accepting the government to put a backdoor in of some kind, red flags, immediate red flags. And so that's why I think we have to take like a stronger lead in building out infrastructure framework policy ahead of time. Say, if you want to do business, we absolutely will support you, but this is how you do it.
Very good point, Charlie.
They are not putting a backdoor on the comment about the Apple weakening security for UK users. They in fact pulled back encryption for UK users to, sort of teach a lesson now all your citizens are insecure. So is this what you wanted? If in fact they're saying no, we will not put a backdoor. Instead, we'll just weaken security for all your citizens. I think they did the absolutely the right thing to teach a lesson.
Yeah, Ritesh, can you introduce yourself 2 lines just so that for other folks also know what your background?
Yeah, hi, I'm Ritesh Ahuja. So, like I said, this is the first time I'm joining this session conducted by Naveen. Have met him a couple of times. So I'm actually a security tool builder. I've been in security space, different aspects of security for almost 30 years now. Started my career in networking while pursuing PhD here at Stanford, then got into network security, security analytics on network data, and then all kinds of other things, and most recently automotive security, where I worked on making uh, smartphones act as a secure key for vehicles. And that's where actually I work closely with Apple as well. So um, yeah, I think Apple did absolutely the right thing. Said we will not add a backdoor, but we'll just weaken the security of your entire set of citizens. Now take this versus, trying to push us to share data of specific users.
Thank you, Ritesh. So, Jim, you have someone else also with 30 years of experience here. Just kidding. All right. So, Mike, Gorman, since your company, Mike, you're like net founder, you guys are also in infrastructure. It'll be great to hear your insights. As a CISO there, how do you see from your customers this role of AI in the infrastructure kind of solutions you guys are providing?
Fortunately, we've been able to stay out of the fight. Our entire business is predicated on data in motion. We're on the infrastructure side, more like Ali, and we don't see that data. We don't have access to it. We like it that way. Information risk is about this big, right? And so we've been able to kind of sit back and watch AI, and not become too involved, which is really great because we're a small company and don't have the resources. The engineering side of me is much more concerned about the power of badly implemented AI to get out in front of us. I'm not worried about the people that actually know how to use it. I'm much more worried about the people that don't, and how terrifying it would be for them to start cutting it loose in the wrong ways and in the wrong places, and how much damage it could do that, Dolly's point, can't be traced back. we don't know what it did, et cetera. So I'm very glad to be outside of that fray, to be quite honest with you. And hopefully I will manage to retire from that point.
Thank you, Mike. So anyone else, Rob, Vinay, Harnish, any insights you guys want to provide on this issue of the AI and from a security perspective?
This is Ravi from Kitra, and in the past I used to work in the MDR space and detection response. What I noticed, AI is replacing level 1 SOC analysts. They typically have in the SOC security operations center 3 levels of analysts: level 1, level 2, level 3. Pretty much level 1 does the enrichment and alert triage and prioritization. That I think pretty much AI takes care of that. So that pretty much that job is gone. So level 3 is the one that you have to deal with the company that's outsourced, and that'll continue to be there. And also in the source space, this thing orchestration space, the playbooks and all, AI can help out with the playbooks, and you don't have to have static playbooks. It could be generated on the fly based on information. And those are the areas I see AI pretty much affecting.
And let me ask this as an honest question, as I've sat back and watched, which is the companies that are doing that are implementing AI at that level 1 SOC level, and a lot of other similar roles, right? The lower skilled, less experienced roles, are they maintaining the kind of AI engineering expertise to watch the AI itself and to make sure that it doesn't start to go off track? Because I have this feeling, and I've seen it in some places, where AI is the new cloud. There are executives going, AI is going to solve everything. it can cut our labor costs 40%, but they're not out actively hunting, you know, a $200,000 a year senior AI engineer, because AI is magic. It's just going to work, and that thing's going to go sideways and either flood you with alerts, or you're just going to have a whole lot of false negatives because the AI said, well, why? It's Tuesday. I don't want to do that today. That's my particular fear, is that people aren't bringing in the skill sets to monitor and operate the AI to see how it's performing. And that is a very specialized skill set with not a lot of practitioners right now. I mean, we were rare 20 years ago. They're the next us, right?
Yeah.
They're very
It's
rare.
definitely
They're
tricky.
very expensive.
And we hear about the worst examples, right? Like you see the if a support ticketing tool goes haywire, or a knock tool goes haywire, you hear about the worst of it, but I think the noise that it's creating in the system is also pretty dangerous. Just the arbitrary ticket responses that it can generate, or give away credit miles in some situations. So there are some bad examples out there. I think it'll need a lot more governance and insight.
Yeah, so Mike, I think the answer to your question is that if you think of the 1,000 biggest enterprises or most sophisticated enterprises in terms of cybersecurity skill and competence, there's probably 5 of them that have the maturity that largely came from the investments they made in data science. And their data scientists are creating ML systems, and they're gravitating to LLMs, and they make that transition because they understand data, and they are capable to do that at enterprise scale. The rest of the 1,000 companies, if you just pick an arbitrary number, not so much. So I think the market is struggling with this, and will continue to struggle for some time.
Yeah, and I think coming back to the group of CISOs, I think it's up to us to make sure that we understand where the risks are. And when you say to facilitate things, to understand, you know, what the potentials are, what the real costs are to do it right, et cetera, and start to make sure that's in the conversation. And it's not just PFM that AI is going to solve all this, just like cloud was. You know, what are the risks? What are we doing? And I'll shut up so Girish can talk, because he's had his hand up for like 10 minutes.
Girish.
Yeah, no, I had a couple of thoughts. I mean, excellent discussion, right? So we work with U.S. Army and also with the Department of Homeland Security, especially CISA, right? So to part of what you said, a lot of them are worried, in general, people are worried about both offensive and defensive, especially using AI to, confuse, right? The signals and all of that stuff. So there is a role that, scenarios can play, right? So you use data and say, hey, what if this were to happen? I want to create that scenario, and then see how the AI model will react, right? That way we'll have better confidence on, hey, this is okay. Even if this were to have boundary conditions, it will still work, and so on, right? So I think, in my opinion, at least what we are seeing is data plays a big role in these kind of scenario planning and approaches, where it can inform you on what could be the limits or boundaries and all of that stuff. So just a point. And then I do want to ask at some point your take on quantum. I think Ali touched on it a while back. Would love to hear about how are you guys planning for it, or is it still too early? Separate question, again, doesn't have to be here at this time, but maybe after this topic.
Okay. Thank you, Girish. I think it looks like Sunil, you have a question, maybe 2 lines. You can introduce yourself. Many folks may not know you, and then you can and what your question is or insights you want to provide.
Sure, Naveen. Thank you, Naveen, for hosting this event. Hi, nice meeting everyone. Nice meeting everyone. My name is Sunil. I have an AI startup called Yota Secure. We do AI-based vulnerability management. Essentially, it's a co-pilot for vulnerability management. So one of the areas where, when I was at Elevance Health, which is formerly Anthem, was the role of BISOs, Business Information Security Officers. So which was crucial because a large organization like Elevance Health There's so many business lines, and that was where I played the role of BISO for the digital, Anthem Digital. And we see that a lot of these tools at the time, especially Gen AI, was something which we looked at and we said, we can't really use Gen AI for, healthcare data set, especially ChatGPT, right? The open models. So we wanted to look at something which is closed because of the PII, PHI, and also more member-facing chatbot kind of applications rather than the actual usage of Gen AI in cybersecurity operations, other than looking at data sets. So we see that it has changed since 2 years, 3 years, but still the um, comfort level of the CISOs is something which whether they really would trust the Gen AI. I think the trust and safety aspect, if you look at the hallucinations and the bad AI using good AI, or bad actors using AI to do bad things. So how do the CISOs differentiate or essentially address those areas? So that's my question.
Okay. Anyone remembers the context? Randy, you want to start? I know it was a long one, Sunil, so at least that's hopefully, Randy, you got what Sunil is asking.
Yeah, it's how do we keep up with some of the bad actors, and how do we accelerate our defenses because they're not slowing down. I agree with that. I think I touched on it a little bit earlier, and that's exactly what's happening. And how do we trust a lot of the AI models today? One of the topics that keep coming up is the accuracy of some of these AI solutions that are coming out there. And so my only approach right now is identify AI solutions in your security environment that make sense. One of the items that was brought up, I think Ravi mentioned, is that a lot of these AI tools solve for the layer one. The question that came up is, well, how do you know the accuracy of that? How do you get the right people to go in and remediate that? Well, hopefully it's a vendor solution, and you can require the vendor to make sure that any inaccuracies or anything that comes up is their responsibility. Because quite frankly, in a SOC environment where the level one analyst is replaced by AI, the level two is going to make us think about it because they're not going to want to waste their time when anything that's escalated over to them, and certainly not a level three. So there are options that you can do to implement some of these checks and balances, if you will. And I think you're going to find some of those opportunities. But in all honesty, I don't think that's going to allow for us to catch up quickly. I think we're still going to be in that, far behind catch up mode in some of these security tools that we need to implement, going against those bad AI or bad actors that are leveraging AI.
Yeah. Okay. So a couple of things. Thank you, Randy. We are almost like close to the time. So one thing is, one of the basic tenet of this whole this roundtable is you folks can interact with each other. So if you want, I know a lot of you have already shared your LinkedIn. If you want to, it's up to you, your choice. So please feel free to do that in the chat box, and you can share and connect with each other and help or build a net, whatever your professional network. Now, the last question, I was going to talk more. I think a lot of things were discussed already in the some of our your interactions right now on the basic challenges top challenges rather in 2025 for the CISOs. And so maybe what we can do is you can just say one key point to remember or take away, all three of you and other folks. So whoever wants
I
to
think
start
there's
off
a
with.
lot.
Yeah. No, I do, of course. I mean, feel free to, but I know Jim,
Yeah,
it might be getting late. Yeah.
I'll take the easy way out, which is generative AI governance. It's the top challenge for 2025 and 2026, and probably 2027. And frankly, finding the talent that's necessary requires CISOs to commit to helping people learn what they want to learn. And if they can do that, you'll always find top talent. And that's what's going to be needed because the landscape is fundamentally changing, both in terms of preventing attacks that are initiated through LLM technology, as well as using it to prevent, in terms of the software capabilities that we use, as well as protecting the software products that we build using LLMs. So it's all about generative AI for the next couple of years.
Randy or Ali,
Yeah,
whoever
a
wants to go.
lot of things come to mind. Threats are a lot smarter. Regulations are definitely tighter. And, especially in the AI-driven threat side we talked about, it's, the attackers are weaponizing, they're leveraging AI for those automated phishing attack. We talked a little bit about that, but also deepfake, social engineering. I just spoke about that during the Valentine's Day on romance scam and those using AI to help get into that. And so every year in the US is about $1 billion. From 2022 to 2023, it's grown dramatically and it's going to keep growing. The other one that concerns me is the legal and personal liability of CISOs, right? So it's not just about, stopping breaches, it's about who gets blamed when something does go wrong, especially when SEC regulations demand that disclosures of cyber incidents for publicly traded companies, and also what is the failure to comply? How is that measured? One of the other things that was brought up is API security, and so that's a lot of the attackers' favorite target. So insecure APIs can definitely expose sensitive data and definitely compromise an entire supply chain. And then the last one is around insurance, right? Insurance is getting more expensive. It's harder to qualify for, and you have to have stronger security controls. And these days, the definition of stronger security controls keep changing because of the attack surface, and so that's an interesting area. I'll leave it at that. There's a lot more, obviously, but those are the ones that come to mind.
Thank you, Randy. Ali?
I'll keep it really simple. Build an app yourself and follow the data. You want to up-level your skills? You want to know what's happening? Build one yourself, follow the data. You'll learn better by doing than anything else.
Okay, thank you. So with that, I would like to thank everyone, unless you guys have anyone else wants to provide one takeaway, anyone audience to remember?
Maybe I can get a word in.
Yeah.
I think all the issues highlighted, these are real, of course, and they'll persist for quite some time. We'll be quite surprised at the rate at which use cases are evolving and new things are happening. SLMs are going to become much more prevalent, and a lot of the data these small language models use will probably be under the radar for many of us. And someone talked about sovereign clouds. Increasingly, we'll see data being stored in different geographies. And all of the solutions we're talking about, data governance, AI governance, everything has to go through a huge shift when you have data sitting in different countries, different models using them. And just look at the way agentic AI is developing, right? I know the word is loosely used, but the number of agents and use cases that are evolving, it's like everything you can think of is getting automated. And yes, not very well right now, but I'm a product guy. I'm always optimistic that we'll eventually get it right. We'll really do shoddy work and a lot of issues, and over time we'll iterate and get it better. But the number of use cases that are evolving is only going to make the problem much, much more complex in how to secure all aspects of it. We don't even know the start of this, really.
Yeah.
And that's
Thank
good
you,
for the
Vinay.
product guys. It's good
Thank
for
you, Vinay. This is good. Anyone, Parminder or anyone else before
Yes,
we?
thank you so much. It was a great discussion. I just want to, get to the just very simple point. Know your landscape, know your data, understand, try to think through the overall workflows, right? So I think if we go through the basic fundamentals, either even it's a Gen AI or the new technology which will be coming, we will be able to tackle it. So that's my 2 cents. Thank you. Amazing
Yeah.
to work, listen, everybody.
Thank you, Parminder. I appreciate it. Anyone else who would like to? I know there are a lot of folks. Harnish, do you wanna say something? What you see from your AWS?
No, I just see the
infrastructure.
I just see just extraordinary enthusiasm for Gen AI and perhaps the ignorance of the vulnerability of using it. And I liked Randy's point about governance. I thought that was an excellent point of view, actually. One question, what would your younger self give advice to somebody starting right now in cybersecurity? That's the question. For anyone.
Younger
Yeah,
self. I want to forget about my younger past. Just kidding.
I've been working with some folks that wanted to get into security, and the questions that they keep asking is, how do I get in there? And I said, one of the mistakes people make is they feel that they have to know everything, and then just know everything. And what I tell people is know a lot about security, but specialize in one specific area. And I think right now AI is that area that some folks should spend a little bit more time on. There may be opportunities for them to learn a lot, but there may also be opportunities to join another group or organization to help define what AI security should look like and be a part of that change.
Okay.
The reality is cybersecurity leaders hire professionals that demonstrate intellectual curiosity, because the threat actors change tactics and we have to adjust. That's the nature of the beast. And it turns out you can't teach people how to be intellectually curious, but you can certainly tolerate odd behavior for those that are intellectually curious, because those that are ask a ton of questions. So if I was breaking into cybersecurity, the advice I'd give myself, ask a lot of questions, because that demonstrates intellectual curiosity. We can teach everything else, all the other skills. We can't teach intellectual curiosity.
I think I would just say, Harnish, to that is, no one starts out in security. Somehow your path leads you there. Just build something. You'll figure it out as you go. Don't let anything hold you back. Just build something. Anything, but build something.
Yeah,
Very
absolutely.
Good. All right.
Right. Thanks,
okay,
everyone.
great. So thank you, everyone. And I would like to thank Apurva, Pete, and Ravi here to help coordinating, as well as Derek and a lot of folks. Jacria, Smriti, Chaya, Vida. Any of you have any questions? Andre, Rob, please, this is your opportunity, so you don't feel we didn't provide you the opportunity to interact.
I'm good. Thank you, Naveen.
All right.
I enjoyed it very much.
I have a couple of things. One is, great comments, Evan. I really enjoy all your sessions, Naveen. Thank you for doing these regularly. One thing is the B2C, secure cybersecurity education. Why is it so poor? You have defense, you have Army, Navy, Air Force. Why is there no cybersecurity education? Why are there no? This should be taught in schools, isn't it? The hygiene practices, what to do with your data. It's like kids should learn it, isn't it?
Yeah, good question. Jim, maybe I'll ask you to provide the insightful answer to that.
Cybersecurity is actually starting to get into high school curriculums, and it's the right kind of content, which is experience oriented and practical, as opposed to theoretical and hypothetical. So actually, there is help on the way. Should we do more? Absolutely. I've been involved with a couple of programs that started to teach cybersecurity in elementary schools.
Okay, and another thing, why are the interfaces so complicated? Like so many vendors. No, I mean, honestly, there are agents, right?
True.
Why don't you have like a Google search kind of thing? Why is it so complicated?
Well, Google search is going to disappear, I think, from Perplexity or ChatGPT.
Yeah, but so then interfaces should be voice enabled, isn't it? Everybody talks about complicated interfaces. Who's working on it? Okay, that's all. Just a question, you don't have to answer it.
Question for the universe
Dodge
to answer.
can answer that. Dodge is working on it.
Dodge. Oh yeah, sure.
Dodgy.
Okay.
Sorry, I had a
thank you, Vida.
Yeah,
yes, go ahead.
Thank you, guys. Thank you.
Thank you. I don't want to open up a can of worms. If the answer is too long, we can leave it for the next time. But it's more about, we talk about AI for security and security for AI. How do we see that relationship developing? We are looking towards AI to improve our security analytics and such, but at the same time, there are credible concerns about how do we secure AI as well. So how do we see that developing?
Yeah, so there's answering that in a short period of time is kind of tough, but I'll take a crack at it, which is the way generative AI works. It predicts the characters and words that are going to follow the next character or the previous character and word. It doesn't use logic or reasoning. Some of the reinforcement learning techniques, chain of thought as an example, is starting to add reasoning into the effectiveness of the models. We're just kind of scratching the surface there. But the point is this, the models, the business processes that we've all grown up on expect deterministic output. They expect the answer, and the answer to be right every time and be the same every time. LLMs don't work that way. Technology doesn't work that way. And so you have unpredictable output. So now we've got unpredictable output being fed into business processes that expect the deterministic output to be consistent every single time. And that in of itself is where one of the biggest challenges are of using and deploying generative AI effectively. And frankly, it still requires people and still requires judgment. Now, we're getting better. We, meaning the industry, is getting better at tools and capabilities to improve the judgment and reasoning. But we're not there yet, and that means that we have to rely on people, and people are still going to be able to look at a model and say, that data's not right, or that's the wrong interpretation, the wrong bias. Go back to the drawing board and do some more work on it, and that's the iterative journey that we're on.
Thank you for that. Thank you.
All right, Ali, you have last words, or shall we?
I think Jim gave a very, very detailed answer on that one. I think the only thing that I would add is the AIs talk a lot. They're way too verbose. Right? They spew out way too much text. I think we'll know things are getting better when they're more succinct.
All right. With that, thank you, everyone. So we'll see you next month. Please join, and we'll be announcing in next.
Yeah, thanks everyone. And just a reminder,